Have you ever said something to a homeschooler that might have been a little bit rude, but you're not sure? Are you a homeschooler and you're tired of hearing the same stereotypes over and over again? Hey guys, it's Jada from progressiveschooling.com, and today I'm going to talk about things you should never say to a homeschooler. Often people will say things without even realizing it. People are so used to hearing stereotypes about homeschoolers, they just assume that it's all true. Today I'm going to talk about why you shouldn't say things like, I couldn't be homeschooled, I need a social life. Why are homeschoolers so weird? And you don't go to real school. Okay, let's start off with the first thing you should never say to a homeschooler, you don't go to real school. So, I don't understand why people don't consider homeschooling as an equal alternative to public school, private school, Catholic school, whatever type of school you go to. It is an equal alternative. It's at home. It's just like going to a school, but you're just doing school at home. Homeschoolers learn an equal, if not more, amount of things when they're learning, and they normally get through things faster. Plus, homeschooling is becoming more and more popular, so more people are doing it, and it just doesn't make sense that it would not be considered real school, considering how many people are doing it now. Alright, so the second thing you should never say to a homeschooler is, I couldn't be homeschooled, I need a social life. So, this one is just really annoying to hear because people are thinking of the stereotypes and assuming that homeschoolers don't have social lives. But the homeschooling community has grown so much over the past 20 years. There are so many people in the homeschool community, and in most places around the world, there are homeschooling groups that people are part of, and they do activities. They do weekly activities or multiple times a week. Homeschoolers can get together, and even if you are homeschooled, you still can be part of extracurricular activities and do fun activities and things with whoever it is that you want to socialize with. So homeschoolers do have a social life. So the third thing to never say to a homeschooler is, why are you so weird? Or why are homeschoolers so weird? Okay, first off, this is just plain rude. But they might be considering weird as more mature or something like that. Because homeschoolers spend less time learning about pop culture or worrying about what other people think and trying to dress properly like everyone else in their school is dressing, they have a little bit more time to do things that interest them, and they're not always following what everyone else is doing. Homeschoolers are also considered to be more mature because they know how to talk to adults. They spend a lot of their days talking to adults and their parents, and sometimes they go to grocery stores, and they're normally more mature than conventional schooled students. The next thing not to say to a homeschooler is, but what grade are you in? So this one isn't necessarily rude. People sometimes are just generally curious what grade you're in. But homeschoolers don't always know what grade they're in. They have an age, like based on their age, they have a grade, but they're not always at that grade level because homeschoolers tend to do things a little bit faster, so they might be at a higher grade level or maybe sometimes a lower grade level, or maybe their grade levels are mixed up, so maybe they do really well in science, so it's a 5th grader and they're doing 7th grade science, but they're doing 4th grade math, and then they're all over the place with different types of grades. So it really depends on who you're talking to, and homeschoolers aren't always sure what grade they're in, so this one's a little bit hard to answer sometimes. Alright, so number 5 is, do you like being homeschooled? This one is kind of another hard to answer question for homeschoolers. For me personally, I do like homeschooling, and I mean, obviously it does have its high and low points, but I do like homeschooling overall. But some people would say different things, and sometimes it's hard to answer the question because a lot of people consider homeschooling, if it's all they've done their entire lives, they consider homeschooling to be just as annoying as conventional schooling. So if it's all they've ever done, then they can't really compare liking homeschooling. It's like asking you if you like public schooling. So this thing is kind of hard to ask to certain people, depending on how well you know them and if they've been homeschooling their whole life or if it's just a new thing. Okay, number 6 is homeschoolers don't learn as much as regular schoolers. Okay, so don't ever say this to a homeschooler. First of all, it's kind of rude, and secondly, it's not true. Normally, homeschoolers learn an equal amount, if not more, than conventional schoolers. It's common for homeschoolers to learn more or know more about certain subjects because normally they spend more time, less time is wasted compared to in class in public schools. Normally you have breaks and you have to do attendance, and when you get back into the class there's attendance, and then everyone needs to get focused again, and sometimes there's people fooling around, so it's kind of hard, and there's sometimes a lot of time is wasted. But when you're homeschooled, that doesn't happen as much because you're the only member of the class, or maybe you're with your siblings, and so there's less people to fool around, and normally you can get things done a lot quicker. So this is why homeschoolers tend to be in higher grade levels, like the last thing I talked about. So normally this theory is not true, and homeschoolers learn an equal amount, if not more, than conventional schooled students. Alright, so number 7 is I could never spend that much time with my parent. We would kill each other. Okay, so don't ever say this. Like, you wouldn't actually kill each other. That would not happen. And it's not what you think it is. Sure, it can be frustrating sometimes when your parents trying to teach you something and you don't understand at all, but it just becomes normal, and normally homeschooled students have a different type of relationship with their parents because their parents are acting as their teacher too. Plus, homeschoolers aren't with their parents 24/7. They do other things. They're not just with their families all day, all the time. They can go hang out with other friends, and they go to homeschool groups, and they hang out with other people and other people's parents, maybe if there's classes. So they're not always with their parents at all times. So it's not really as hard as you think. Okay, number 8 is shouldn't you be worried about getting back to regular school? Okay, so again, this is kind of like the real school one, and homeschoolers do not worry about getting back to regular school. There's a lot of things in this sentence that just don't agree with homeschoolers in general because homeschooling is school. And I don't know why this doesn't process in some people's minds, but it counts as an alternative to conventional school, what people are used to hearing about. But homeschooling still is school, and people aren't worrying about getting their kids back into school. And this one might be directed mainly towards older students who people are wondering if they're going to graduate from a high school, because often people don't understand how homeschoolers can get into universities. But it's not that hard, and this question, just try to avoid it because there are a lot of things that in the sentence that you should not say to a homeschooler. Okay, number 9, this one annoys me a lot. It is, you won't have a good chance of getting into university. Okay, so first off, how do people know this? Whoever says this to you clearly hasn't done their research, because yes, homeschoolers can get into university. It is not as hard as most people think. It's not something that homeschoolers should worry about too much, because there are certain schools, like the Ivy League schools, they want homeschoolers because they see them as more college ready. So I don't know why people would ask these questions. Clearly they don't know much about homeschooling or getting into university after homeschooling. So just, if you're going to say this to someone, just look it up and find out more about it before you say something like this to a homeschooler. Alright, so the last thing to try to avoid saying to a homeschooler is, how do you like your teacher? So normally when someone asks this, there's a couple laughs around the room. But I mean, obviously your parent, when you're homeschooled, your parent is normally your teacher. And this is obviously a joke, but once you've heard it like 20 times, it can get a little bit tiring. Sure, it's funny at the beginning, but after a while, it's kind of hard to answer. And I mean, most people wouldn't consider it a hard to answer question, but after hearing it that many times, you kind of just end up saying the same thing over and over again, and you're not necessarily telling the truth always because you're just so used to saying that automatic response. So if you're actually generally curious about how the homeschool student likes having their parent as a teacher, maybe ask the question a little bit differently, not in this form. because this type is kind of hard to answer. That was my list of things to avoid saying to a homeschooler based on my own experiences or what I've heard from other homeschoolers. So normally homeschoolers, I'm sure all homeschoolers out there have heard at least one of these things that I've said in this video today. But if you have said something like this, don't worry about it. Just try to avoid it next time and do research before you say something like that again, because normally these stereotypes about homeschooling are not true, and it can be kind of annoying as a homeschooler hearing them so often. So if you want to find out more about things to avoid saying to a homeschooler or things that homeschoolers are tired of hearing, I have a post about that on my website, so you can go check it out at progressiveschooling.com/never say, or you can find it in the description below. Thanks so much for watching.